So, I wanted to talk about what you can do if you aren't sure whether or not you're the abuser. Because in victim spaces, 100% you will get abusers who think they're the victim, victims who think they're the abuser, people who've been victims and go on to abuse. And all of this is often tied to one's level of self awareness, but also I think, kind of key hidden factor, and that I don't know that a lot of abuse resources talk about, is kind of the one that's related to your social status. So for example, we've got our isms, right? Your racism, classism, sexism, whatever, maybe one is neurodivergent or something. Somehow you've been existing in this world in a way where other people throughout your entire life perhaps have been piling onto you. You seem to be a target for vitriol or for dismissiveness, condescending attitudes and behaviors, and so it can be very easy to think, well, what is wrong with me? And it legitimately could be that you have been the identified target for someone else to elevate themselves, either to themselves or to the group. You get a lot of the status maneuvering. And so sometimes when you're the victim of that and you're trying to explain it, and so it's like, well, I'm going to put it in this, let's say, racism framework, or I'm going to put it in this sexism framework, whatever the framework is. And it doesn't, to me, it's not a global framework. To me, the global framework is a status framework. So I'll give you an example from yesterday. I was watching basketball, like kids basketball stuff, with my son. So my son's new to basketball, but the reason he got into the sports is because he's like big. He's huge. I think he's 6'2" now. Like he's 13, he's 6'2", he's still growing. Thank you God, but at the same time, he's having to ramp up really quickly. He's gone from kind of like zero base knowledge to now we're trying to acquire all of this knowledge. So he's coming into these spaces with less background foundation a lot of the times than some of these other kids who've been playing since they were 5. So one of the things we discovered existed was the like a skills facility training, and then they have like an open play and blah blah blah. And we're like, oh yeah, okay, we'll like sign up for the things and you know get more practice in, get more coaching, get more foundational skills. And so when we went to open gym yesterday, so my son he was sinking baskets. It was great. I was like, yeah, great job, buddy. And there was this other kid who had been with him for a skills workshop, who came in. And so some of the kids had shown up for the open gym and they were playing together. I think he was big mad that my son was doing well and wanted to maybe maintain his social standing, social status, because here's a new person who's developing well. So every time my son made a shot, he said, "Good boy." I mean, I minded my business, but I was like, "Oh, buddy, I see you. I see what you're doing. Not a fan." So anyway, it was a status maneuver. It was a power maneuver, and my son's pretty interesting. A lot of the times, he doesn't respond to stuff like that unless he feels like he has to. So he didn't say anything, and he like dealt with that guy like he was like everybody else, like one of the players. But it was clear. It was clear to me. I think it'll only take a week or two. My son's already, I think, a stronger player than this kid. Now, once my son gets to a certain status, he's going to flip and he's going to be sycophantic. How do I know that? Because he was already doing that with one of the better players who was out there. Someone that my son has been on a team with. So like I knew this kid. And so anyway, when you are trying to explain, like, I don't understand why I'm the target, I don't understand what's going on, often it's because you've been the target of like this social maneuvering and it's hard to articulate. And so we attempt to by using, like sociological concepts like the isms. But that, again, to me, that's not a comprehensive kind of global template that I can cross apply. So anyway, I often recommend to victims of abuse that they listen to that inner voice, their intuition, their gut. A lot of There are a lot of victims in abuse spaces who think they are the abuser, possibly. There are a lot of abusers in victim spaces who think they're the victim. There are victims who've gone on to be perpetrators and are aware of it. There are victims who've gone on to be perpetrators and are not aware of it. And so I think if you are an overthinking kind of person, usually when I see an overthinking kind of person who's like, oh my gosh, okay, this happened and this happened and this happened, and they're trying to give you so much information and so detailed, and they have screenshots, and they're talking to people and they're like trying to do the work. They've taken the abuser very seriously because possibly their experience is that they are wrong. How they are is wrong. What they do is wrong. The choices they make are wrong. And so to them, this is possibly a continuation of the wrongness. And that is why a lot of victims of abuse have already been targets of, let's say, social violence or like interfamily or intra-family within family violence, in family emotional abuse. We're using abuse to basically discuss the social machinations, but in an interpersonal level. So when you're this person and you're wondering, like, oh my gosh, is it me? Like, am I abusive? It may genuinely be that you are doing things on the spectrum of abuse, but not technically be the abuser. It could be that you maybe perhaps have a mental health situation, maybe a personality disorder. And especially if you're younger, you might not recognize it. And so therefore go on to be unsafe because like again, the feelings, your feelings might be driving then how you think about things. This is kind of the situation that happened with my mom. So the first thing to do is to go, you know what? I don't have to know in this moment to make sure I'm making safe choices in the future, to make sure I'm doing what would be the safe thing to do going forward from this point. A lot of these conflicts with abusers, they're reality conflicts, like conflicts over reality, but also conflicts over, are you doing this role correctly? I'm not going to globally say that someone making that argument is always the abuser because I think that there is a place to say, hey, we have kids and you are not being a present, involved, engaged parent. You need to be doing that role correctly. So I'm not gonna say never, but often if you have someone who's like, you're not being a girlfriend correctly, you're not being a boyfriend correctly, you're not being a friend correctly, you're not being a child correctly, a lot of the time that's going to be emotional manipulation or guilt tripping you into doing something you don't want to do. This person is not respecting your intrinsic ability to choose. And so that is coercive, something to pay attention to, and often may indicate that this person's not a safe person. Because genuinely, if you aren't being a good, like hypothetically speaking, let's say we like accepted that as reality. You're not being a good girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, friend, daughter, son, then the reasonable thing to do is for date space and distance. Not I'm going to make you be a good girlfriend. I'm going to make you be a good boyfriend. I'm going to make you be a good friend. I'm going to harangue you into doing what I think is the thing that you should be doing. What we do, what a normal safe person does, is we go, oh, we're not compatible. We aren't able to be our best selves in this particular dynamic. We do not agree on reality. So this clearly is not working out, and that's okay. We move on to a different situation, and that's fine. But you'll find abusers, they want to make, they feel entitled to make you be a certain way. Now this gets tricky again, permutations all day long, my friends. I'm sorry. So let's say you are a person who got into a relationship dynamic with someone with, let's go with avoidant personality style, avoidant personality, avoidant attachment style. So they may have loved bomb you very early on. They may have attempted to win you as a boyfriend or girlfriend. And then once they feel safe and secure, they shut it off. And now they act like you are a terrible person for having any expectations whatsoever. And so you're sitting here going, wait, what? Eh, Excuse me? Or you could have a situation where, everything seems fine, blah, blah, blah. Then you get married and then suddenly there's like a switch up. And you're like, wait, what? This is not the relationship that we've been building. And they're like, yeah, but we're married now. Now you have to do X, Y, and Z. They thought that the marriage or whatever the particular thing is meant now that you have to do something, you should do something. They are putting themselves in the position to be the one who makes that determination, putting themselves in the position of the person who has the power to um, give consequences for not doing it. This is, I mean, again, so we're all adults. We're all adults. What? So when you're having these kinds of conflicts and you can get in the weeds, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's been engaging in crazy making behavior. Now you're doing behaviors on the spectrum of abuse, but you're not the one who's being controlling. But also you're like, I don't like how I'm acting. Okay, reset. Oh, this isn't safe. I'm not my best self when I'm with this person. I'm going to work this out later with probably a therapist. But right now, we need to stop. We need to separate. We need to be in different places. And I'm not going to say that you necessarily have to end things, break up, blah, blah, whatever, though I do recommend it. But you can say, oh, we do not need to live together right now. I'm going to find another place to be. Um, and if they're like, well, I need help paying the rent, get a roommate, because then you'll not have ridiculous expectations of this person. Anyway, so it gets tricky when you're legally entwined. That's why this stuff often happens once you're legally entwined, financially entwined. So anyone who's not preserving your ability to be your own person and make your own decisions, again, like I said, with the exception of when there are children involved, I 100% believe in making someone do what they need to be doing as a parent, within reason, but yeah, so we immediately stop, we separate, and then you can start to process what happened in the past versus attempting to process while you're still in the situation, as things are still occurring, as maybe you're making, choices you wouldn't prefer to be making. You can't stay healthy in a relationship with an unhealthy person. And the longer you stay in a relationship with a person who is an abuser, the more unhealthy you're going to get, because in order to protect yourself, you have to do the things that will actually work. And asking them to stop, explaining your perspective, all of the regular standard relationship tools like, oh, let's communicate, all that does is give them more leverage. It helps them abuse you better. So you do not want to be in that place while you're trying to work this out. And then my second recommendation is to get to a mental health professional, a therapist, a counselor. Some people like a pastor. I personally love my pastor. He's great, but he's also very counseling oriented. And he doesn't bring in spiritual concepts unless you bring in spiritual concepts. And I don't think most pastors are like that. So I don't generally recommend like a pastoral care situation. That is very context specific dependent. But you want to get to somebody who can kind of create a safe space for you to work through the things that you have gone through, possibly have done, in a way that you can safely take a look at yourself, but you don't feel like you're being judged. But that's that, that's it though. If you have somebody who comes in there who's been terrible, like a little judgment may be a good thing. I never take anything off the table. So you want to get to a place where you're separate from that person. You get some outside adult supervision, and you do your best to commit to making safe choices moving forward. And that I think will well position anyone for figuring out effectively, was I the abuser? Was I the victim? If there is, I will say this, if both people have a mental health situation, if both people have like substance use problems, those are probably the rare situation where I look at something and I go, both people, maybe. So depending on how messy, how heinous, how everything your particular situation is, it could apply. I don't generally think that it does, but it doesn't mean it never does. So as always, like, you're going to want to listen to that inner voice, your intuition, your gut instinct. And then also, again, some outside guidance from someone who who's kind of informed on how people work, what patterns look like. If you've only experienced your own patterns in your own life, it's kind of hard to think outside of it. And so getting in front of a person who sees this stuff like every day, like, hey, I have decades of experience. I've seen this pattern all day long. This to me might be what it looks like. Let's talk about it. That can be so helpful in grounding. Also, a lot of victims of abuse will find media that they feels represents them in their situation. And so can go, oh, okay, this is what this looks like, maybe from the outside. Now, I will say there are certain media types that give me an immediate red flag. I got to say, Harley Quinn is absolutely 100% one of them. I'm not saying the Birds of Prey one, but I'm saying in general, anytime I've seen someone who's really into Harley Quinn, that to me is, I'm like, oh, okay. The Punisher is another one. Like, so you're really into the Punisher? Okay, I'm alert. I'm alert. Red flags for some unsafe behaviors or ways of thinking. So anyway, one way also I would say, well, no, because this doesn't always work. I was gonna say you look around and see the people that are kind of like your chosen people that are around you and see kind of like what level of maturity, self-awareness, and mental health they're at, and that'll kind of give you a gauge of like where you're at. Um, Not because I think that you are the 5 closest people to you. I think that we like to be around the people that we feel comfortable, like most comfortable. And so those people are going to be most like ourselves, the ways that we think, the ways that we respond to things, the ways that we look at the world. But I would be very, 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 there's a very big caveat on this because, again, especially if like you're neurodivergent, you may not have found these people and you might be surrounded by assholes. So as always, run it through that inner filter. That's going to help you kind of be guided toward sort of what makes sense for your situation and what is best for you. And also, I have found that you will have gotten correct feedback over the years. It won't necessarily be the thing that people say all the time to you, but usually the truth is something that will have popped up repeatedly over your life. You'll look back and you're like, oh yeah, people say this all the time. Or I've definitely, this is so weird. I've heard this before. That can often be an indicator of like kind of reality. But one thing I think would be very, very good for victims of abuse to recognize, or for us to recognize in general, is that if we're in a relationship dynamic with somebody and they're terrible, that may be speaking to something within us. And we're going to want to work that out with a professional, usually speaking. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.